Welcome to the Root Cause Revolution podcast with functional and integrative nurse nutritionist and energy medicine practitioner, Audrey Christie.
Hey friends, welcome to another Energy Medicine Monday. I'm your host, Audrey. Today we're going to talk about recognizing signs in nature. And what I mean by signs are like signs or messages from whomever you determine your messages are from, be it God, universe, any label there is fine, but a power greater than your own, if you will. I don't even really like to say a power greater than your own, right? But that universal force, right? The messages from not on this earthly 3D experience. And before you turn out, remember, we are on Energy Medicine Monday, right? So you might be thinking, like, come on, Audrey, like, what is this nonsense, right? But it's not superstitious nonsense. Most of us experience some sort of prophecy or some aspect of it daily. It's embedded in our lives, and it always has been throughout history, right? If you just look at little things like people who seek patterns in the stock market, right? Or how many of us adjust our activities based on the weather reports, right? That is basing your life, your activities, what you're doing around prophecy, divination, signs from nature. The cool thing about using nature as your sign or a sign, one of the many signs, one of the many awarenesses that you can get is that when we're in nature, we relax much more quickly, and the more intuitive aspects of ourselves become free. Our innate abilities come through when your human suit is in contact with the natural world. And I don't necessarily mean like out in the wild. You don't have to be out in the wild or in some sort of primitive area of nature for this to work. You just need to be around some aspect of nature, plants, trees, animals, birds. Those things can occur in suburban or rural environments. Just like in everything else, everything in nature is connected. Every person is connected to every other person. Every event is connected to events of the past and future. Everything relates in some way of everything else. Sometimes this is called the law of correspondence. But basically what it means is that there is no such thing as coincidence, right? Every action causes a reaction. Everything we do, everything we think, sets energy in motion that shapes something that will unfold somewhere within our lives. If we do one thing, something else will always result from it. Even the simple things. The difficulty is often in how is figuring out how these things relate. And so it's not just understanding the signs that you get from nature, but also learning or recognizing, I should say, what those connections are or will be. And sometimes those connections are really, really obvious. And other times it takes a lot of effort to figure out those connections. So an encounter with a skunk, for example, might alert us to be careful of our boundaries, but it may also indicate that we need to take a bath, right? So the appearance of a bunch of like little mushrooms in your yard, you've probably seen those after a heavy rain. Those can just be a reflection that we had excessive rain that created really wet soil and a good environment for them. But it could also be an indicator of something like it's a time to recycle ideas and activities and take an entirely different perspective in some situation that is around you. So how do we do this, right? Like I said, the difficulty in using signs from nature is one, knowing what those signs mean, two, knowing how they apply to you. And Yeah, that's basically it. One, knowing what those messages mean, and two, how to apply them to you. And it's also easy to lean into becoming superstitious when in reality, a sign may have a totally different meaning for me as it did you. Okay, so let's talk about some of these things. So the first step is recognizing whether or not a plant or element of nature, so an animal or something in nature, has caught our attention. The first part is recognizing when that has a particular significance for you. And so the first thing to know is that whatever the aspect of nature is that caught your attention, it caught your attention for a reason. Your subconscious mind stimulated the attention to that thing, that being, for a reason. So the first thing you have to do in recognizing your signs from nature is to understand that by some force, some energy has expressed itself to you through whatever it is that you saw. And so then the second step, I said them in reverse order earlier, but the second step is then to study and learn about that aspect of nature to see what is in it for you. And there are some really easy ways to do that. One of my favorite guides for beginners is something called Animal Speak. It's a pocket guide by Ted Andrews. It used to be, my copy is well worn and tattered. It used to be $6.95, and I'll link that in the show notes on your podcast provider. And I got mine on Amazon many, many years ago. I can't imagine it being much more expensive than that. But it is a really great guide, particularly for animals, for you to begin connecting the dots, right? So in order to apply it, one, you're recognizing that the sign is for you. Two, you are examining that aspect of nature, and I'm going to give you an example here in just a minute. And then three, you're examining what is happening in your life, right? So, for example, just last week, I opened the back door, which leads into a shop or a garage. We call it the shop. And then from there is a door outside that leads to the backyard, and then two doors in the front that lead out to the front yard, and then beyond the gates into the pastures. We don't have a lot of water around here. There is a creek that is about half a mile. It's on our property, but a half a mile from the house. So we just don't have a lot of water. So at our old house where we had a creek in the forest, we frequently had all different species of frogs. Here, we don't. And so we were letting the dogs out the other night, and one of my kiddos was coming to meet me in the hallway to give me a hug and kiss for goodnight. And something hopped just right over my foot and into the house and down the hallway. And at first I thought, oh my God, it's a mouse. Thankfully, I think it wasn't a mouse. And I did not assess what, the nature sign would have been for a mouse, but it ended up being a big, huge bullfrog. Now, what I could do is look at a bullfrog in general and all of its mannerisms and try to learn more about it. Or I could look in my handy dandy Animal Speak pocket guidebook and see that a frog symbolizes fertility, that it initiates new starts. It's telling you to explore and accept invitations and offers, and that solitary efforts will be more productive. Now, does this mean that all of these things are true and applicable to what happened? No, because that is a lot of information. But I can tell you that looking at what that book says for frog, I can then connect parts of that to my life right now, parts of that to questions that I was asking in prayer and meditation and journaling and all of those things. So it was a funny and shocking answer. Now, had I lived in our old house in the forest by the lake with the creek right by the house and all of those things, I probably wouldn't have thought much of it. But this was such a strange and attention-grabbing encounter with a frog. I'll give you another example. I was walking along the road. We have a road that goes down through all of our pastures. And on the side of the road, I had stopped to peer over the fence and look at the babies next door. In the neighboring pasture that does not belong to us, it's calving and it's calving season where the cows are all birthing their calves. If you are breeding horses, they're all having their colts or fillies. It's amazing. So I had noticed that there was a new baby calf next door, and I walked up to the fence to get a closer look. And out of the blue, what seemed like out of the blue, it could have been that I was mesmerized by the cute little calf, but out of the blue, a skunk comes right out of the tall grass and right towards me. Now, I smell skunks. I see skunks on the side of the road. Skunks are not uncommon here. But that particular day, that skunk had an unusual, let's call it an unusual encounter with me. So does that mean what, that I needed to take a shower? I believe I was freshly showered that morning. Could have been though. It could also, like I had said at the top of the episode, it's a time to assert your boundaries, which, full disclosure, is boundaries are something that I struggle with personally. And so the full kind of definition for skunk is that now is the time to assert your boundaries. Others may be taking advantage. Demand respect and move forward at your speed. So that's just another interesting encounter. So it's ultimately up to you, up to what your spidey sense says, up to what you think is happening, as to whether or not a nature sign is a sign or omen or message. There are so many books, but the Animal Speak book is one that is very beneficial. There's also one called Nature Speak, and I'll try to link that one up too, but it's more with plants, and I find that one to be a little bit harder to interpret, to put into application in real life. So today's Energy Medicine Monday is about finding and assessing signs in nature, and I hope you find this useful. As always, ratings and reviews and sharing this out so we can reach more people is always helpful, and I thank you for that. And I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Be well.
Thank you for listening to the Root Cause Revolution podcast. Be sure and subscribe on your favorite podcast provider. Ratings and reviews are always appreciated.